Hello and welcome back to DriveDriverDriven. I'm Humble, and today we're going to go for a drive. First drive out, the first outing in the Blunicorn on public roads. I don't want to get your hopes up. Nothing too crazy happens. This is just a preliminary outing to test everything now that the car is back together. I did take it out previously, but there's a few things that I hadn't noticed. And in fact, there's a few things that I didn't notice on this trip until the end. Really what I'm focusing on with this trip is how the brakes feel with the new pedal and brake master cylinders, how the bias feels, and then how the new clutch setup feels. And again, we're finally using the triple carbon RPS clutch setup now that has been successfully installed. And previously you saw me kind of rolling the car back and forth, feeling out how the clutch release feels underfoot, how the engagement feels, and then listening for clutch plate chatter, which you'll sometimes get with multi-plate clutches, either when they're floating in neutral, or if there's you have to, like, say the clutch pedal in and the clutches are released, you might have some chatter. This is the first time we get to check all that. So let me break into the video here and just talk you through some of the things. So picking it up, rolling through the neighborhood here, one thing I just have to come out and say is just how extremely difficult it is to try and drive this car as slow as possible, especially right now with this kind of mid-state of tune. The issues that really present themselves is that right now the idle is set very high. It's idling somewhere around 1250. There is no like partial throttle tuning whatsoever, so the car either wants to go really fast or just decel. There's not really in between here, so it just doesn't want to do 25 miles an hour from this neighborhood. It's just chomping at the bit to go faster. Some partial pulls on the dyno, some minor loading on the dyno. Again, the engine really doesn't have a decent tune in it, and it's certainly not tuned for such a light flywheel and clutch combo. Again, once I get on the gas, I'm just breathing on it. Like I'm not. This isn't even quarter throttle. I don't even know this is like 10% throttle. It really just wants to shoot down the road as quickly as possible. I cannot reiterate enough just how hard it is to drive this car slow. It's always apparent when, you know, you're in the car, but maybe not from the outside or maybe not from pictures, is just how low you sit in the car, and then how low this car is compared to everything else on the road. The Ultima is a very small car. It may not look like it in pictures, but if you put it next to anything, it is just dwarfed by even normal cars like a Camry or a Sentra, or, you know, especially trucks and vans. Everything is just so much bigger than the Ultima is. So you really disappear between cars, and that's something to take into account when you're driving this on the road, is just how out of view you are behind somebody else. The flip side of that is that everybody's looking at you or trying to look at you. So as much as you hide behind other cars, you'll break everyone's neck who can see you. Again, coming off the light, rowing through the gears, trying not to do 1,000 miles an hour. The only thing going through my head really is just be cool, just be cool, just be cool. What's that noise? Is that a vibration? Is that normal? What's normal? There's 1,000 things that run through your head after running in a freshly built car for the first time, and all this is stress. I can enjoy this later, and in fact, we will enjoy this later, but right now it's just 1,000% stress, 1,000% concentration, just trying to take in every bump, rattle, and squeak, every weird noise, just trying to figure out what normal is, because we don't know what normal is. Trying to feel the clutches, as I mentioned before, feel out the brakes. How do those feel? So we'll go back through this neighborhood a little bit, and then we'll come back. All right, back here in the garage, kind of piecing things together a little bit post-drive. The beginning and the end here, this is all filmed a couple of days later, now that I've had some time to digest what happened, diagnose some problems I found, and address them. So let's start in the interior really quick. So as you can see, the interior is still just a mess. I wanted to troubleshoot a few things before getting on to the AC. Basically, focus on the drivability, the basics. Does the car start? Does the car drive? Does it run? Does it stall? Things like that. That first drive, when we pull into the gas station, because I wanted to put a little fuel in it. The car died at the pump and would not restart. Thankfully, I was able to get a jump from some very nice gentlemen who were taking pictures of the car. Was able to thank them and get home. It presented an issue because once I got home, I immediately tried to restart the car, and again, it wouldn't start. The day after, left the car on the charger, started right up. So that tells me the alternator is not charging. Well, why isn't it charging? I thought everything was okay because I keep the car on a battery tender, just old habits. And of course, when you pull it off the battery tender, everything's topped up, 13 volts, blah, blah, blah. But as you drive, you just drain the battery without it charging. Well, if you stop or it stalls, you're dead in the water. Going through some of the software, that's where the issue was. So down here is our Holley Dominator. From the Dominator, we're running a wire over to our alternator. And the alternator we're using is that spiffy 370 amp MechMan alternator. It's very unusual that a heavy duty alternator like that wouldn't work or wouldn't be charging. And it's a 2-wire setup. So you have one wire that goes from the alternator down to the starter and then directly to the battery, and a second wire, which is a small gauge wire like this stuff here, that is looking for a 12 volt signal to tell it to charge, basically. It's expecting a 12 volt positive signal, which lights up the alternator and gets the alternator charging. Well, in the software for our Dominator, it was a simple thing, which is the difference between a logic and a logic or. So the configuration was set to and. So it needed condition A and condition B to be true, or to be on, in this case, in order for the alternator to start charging. But the conditions were something had to be 0, which wasn't the case because that bit isn't being monitored, that sensor. And condition 2 was that the engine had to be running over 500 RPM, which means the engine's actually running, to give it a live signal. And it was set to and. Well, what I had to do is change that to or, so that basically if either of those conditions were met, it would light up the circuit. So basically what it's now doing is waiting for the engine to be on and running 500 RPM or more. Then it'll just light up that circuit and it charges, and it does work. It's charging quite a bit, actually. So good, in fact, that it's causing other problems now, which I'll get to in a moment. The other problem I found, it's hard to get a good shot without getting glare, but back in the car with the systems turned on, I have our brake pressure sensors here. So this is the front and this is the rear. If I just lightly apply the brakes, you can see that they're pretty close, 181, 182, little fluctuation there. But as I press the brakes harder, you can start to see our balance bar comes into effect. And so I needed a bigger front bias, which is 530 something here, 500 something there. That's pretty close to a 50-50 brake bias, which is a little bit rear heavy than we want. Something like that is good for a full fuel load where there's more weight on the back axle. But I have to do some more testing to make sure that that's acceptable. What I'm after is I want the front wheels to lock up first, and then and that's the safe way to do it. If the rear wheels lock up first, when you're going into a corner, that's a surefire way to enter the corner backwards and exit the corner somewhere off the outside.
brake feel is awesome. These brakes, this is how I think the car should have been delivered, with this kind of pedal feel, with this pedal ratio, and with these master cylinders. It's everything that I wanted out of the Ultima brakes, the manual brakes, I should say specifically. This is how it should have felt from the get-go, and they inspire far more confidence than they did previously.
So I think that's going to do it for today. I still have quite a bit more to cover, quite a bit more to do on the car. I don't think we're done yet, but I also need to get some tuning done, need to get some more drivability testing done. So look forward to having a few more driving videos out here before we treat this as a finished project. Although realistically, it's never really done. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.